Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have Merriel here. How's it going, Merriel?
How's it going, guys?
It's the middle of winter right now. Actually, the middle of December. I actually when do you know what the first official day of winter is? They're all weird.
No, I don't. Maybe one of these guys could help us out and let us know.
Yeah,
And it almost seems like winter keeps getting pushed more and more and more and more,
yeah,
like that way.
yeah. So in Texas right now, the outside temperature is like 75 degrees, and it feels like it's 80 something. Um, and Yeah, it's like next week is Christmas, and it does not feel anything like that. So I'm.
We're actually taking a trip up to Colorado for Christmas.
Oh yeah, you did mention that. That's awesome. So you're going to be able to get and see all the snow and all that, and actually
Yeah,
experience some good cold weather.
we actually did it on the lake, so I'm trying to get with some guys to see if I could catch some fish and over a frozen lake, see what that's all about.
Awesome, awesome. Well, for those who are joining us, this is the One Last Cast podcast where Merrill and I talk about some of kayak fishing and fishing in general along the Texas coast. Glad that you can join us. And if you want to join us live, we go live. We try to go live every 2 weeks. And you can join us at facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. There you can find when we go live. And also, we post up our all of our contests on there, so you can win some cool prizes. For those of you in chat, I want to mention this week's prize. I'm going to give a prize pack of corkies. I feel like it's appropriate since we're talking about trout fishing and winter trout fishing in a sense. So just for being here today and commenting, you'll be entered to win a prize pack of corkies with some jig heads, which I just threw across the screen, some jig heads, and a couple packs of these knock and tail lures, one of our sponsors here. Great soft plastics. I'll be using these forever, basically. They work really well, and especially during the winter when they're a little bit lethargic and you want that little bit of extra noise. The little beads in the tail, they make that noise, and they can get some good strikes out of those. I do want to mention some of the sponsors for our podcast, Foray Printing. They've been with us since the beginning. Aaron creates these awesome towels as well as these custom buffs for us. Do great stuff. So if you're looking for anything like that, t-shirts, just contact him at Foray Printing. And of course, we said the knock and tail lures. Michael has created these, and right now, for me personally, they're my go-to soft plastics. I use them all the time, and I'm looking forward to what he has coming up in this coming year. And of course, if you're looking for a kayak fishing forum to kind of talk about and learn the ropes, down 30 South Kayak Anglers, DSKA, you can find them on Facebook. It's a great place to kind of go there and learn. So just kind of want to dive right into our topic today, which is winterish trout fishing. Um,
Winterish.
Again,
I like the title on that one.
yeah, it's not it's not actually, it's not even fall. It doesn't feel like fall. It feels like a early summer kind of spring day right now. But it's fall, and we've had some cold fronts, in air quotes, cold fronts
Yeah,
come through, and it's gotten down to what, like the upper 40s, maybe like a couple times.
yeah, for a
Uh,
short period of time.
yeah, it's like a day.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know the statistics on this, but to me personally, how I feel, this feels like a very warm December so far. How about you?
Yeah, definitely a warmer December than most.
Yeah,
Um, I just kind of feel like the winters keep getting pushed more and more towards January and February. I don't know what's going on, but
yeah. Um, so so this is a weird transition period, and of course, if you've listened to our talks before, we often talk about difficult times being transition periods. I personally think one of the more difficult transition periods is the winter to spring. That's a really difficult transition period for me. But I feel like this is a perfect prime example of a transition period. It's supposed to be fall. We're going to be in the 50s and 60s on a consistent basis. We're supposed to get these strong cold fronts coming through, dropping the temps down into the 40s, maybe even the 30s on occasion. And that's kind of not happening. So, with your experience with that, Merrill, what happens to these traps during these times? I have an idea, but I wanted to see what you think.
oh man, I think they're beginning to transition to the winter pattern, but not quite because we're still catching them. And in some shallow areas, but start catching them recently. Start moving into the deeper channels, when I mean deeper, I'm like the 10 plus feet deeper channels, where they usually go when it gets really really cold. Uh, you know, they typically go there too on high pressure days. That's we actually had some big wind recently. I tried to talk my clients out of not fishing that day. They were like, well, it's my only day off, and but we found some protection, and we actually caught some fish, so it wasn't too bad of a day. Um, but yeah, so couple moving into the deeper waters, but not in the numbers like you would in the winter. So I feel like they're not quite there yet, but we're still catching them in shallow waters. What I mean by shallow is like, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, maybe even shallower, but most likely.
I've actually, for me, I haven't even caught them in the transition, in going into the deeper waters. I've been catching them in like the 2 to 3 foot range, up against the shoreline almost,
Mhm.
very shallow. And however, during I haven't I'll admit that I actually haven't been in a couple weeks, but the I feel that right now they're kind of these transition periods. The fish don't really know what's going on. I think that they have an idea of what's supposed to happen. Right now it's December. They're supposed to be experiencing these cold fronts. They're supposed to stock up and fatten up for the winter, and they're going to slowly make their way down into those ledges. Like you said, the 10 foot range, and kind of sit there. And then during the winter, they just come up and down that ledge, depending on how warm it gets. When it gets warmer, they'll come up, go onto the flat right off the drop off, go feed, and then it gets cold again. They'll just drop right back into that deeper area. And for me, the fish haven't even thought about moving off to the deeper area. They're still up
Yeah,
in
yeah, I'm
you know.
catching them. Yeah, so I'm catching them in the deeper water, like the one that I posted not too long ago.
Mhm.
That was a bigger trout, and I actually caught that one in 25 plus feet. So yeah, and then so that was actually in Mississippi. But here I've actually caught some in that deeper water, using I usually use the 3/8 ounce jig head or half an ounce jig head,
Mhm.
depending on the current. Because sometimes these areas that I'm fishing, they have really big current, and that half ounce jig head helps me get down there. We've been using knocking tail lures, and that's actually also been helping us catch them. So we're going through them pretty good.
Yeah, and I can't believe that you kind of buried a lead there. You're fishing in Mississippi.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
how
sorry, not Mississippi, Alabama. My bad.
Alabama.
Yeah,
But
Alabama.
how was that? I've never fished in Alabama, and I know I've seen videos, and I know their tide swings are crazy over there. Um, and but how was that? How is that compared to fishing over here in Galveston?
Man, it's the water. I mean, it's almost the same stuff. It's kind of like the tactics that I use here in Galveston are real similar to the tactics that I use out there in Alabama. So it's basically, once you get to learn the area and you learn these techniques, you can try to imply them most of the times to other areas or bodies of water, and sometimes they work. And it just so happened it worked out for me.
Okay, yeah. It's and the trout. I'm assuming when you're in Alabama, you're saying that there's a behavior kind of similar.
Yeah,
That
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I guess my lure presentation is what I'm saying. So when I'm
Oh, okay.
throwing my lure out there, and I'm bringing it in, so if I burned it, I wasn't getting any bites. But when I slowed the presentation down too slow, I wasn't getting much of a hit, but kind of like a medium pace, and kind of giving it some fall to it. Once I give it to some fall, that's what they like, is when it fell down. So yeah, is that what you're
Yeah,
kind of?
yeah. But I guess for us when we think about this transition period, um, you know, I don't. Whenever it's getting tough, I actually think fishing. Usually for me, fishing in the during the fall, I highly recommend it to most people because it's really to me it's really easy. I think it's easy, um, but it has to be cold, which
Oh,
it's
when
not.
it's super cold, yeah, that's like fishing in a barrel in some of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
spots.
But
Yeah.
even whenever we've had consistent like 50-degree days, I think the fishing is pretty easy. They stack up in certain areas. For the fall pattern, they'll be on these flats and reefs that we've that I've experienced for many years. They'll be there. If they're not there, it got a little bit too cold for them. They pushed off into a little bit deeper water. I can
Right.
find them there. But now that it's been in the upper 70s basically for weeks,
Right.
um, these cold fronts haven't pushed in and flushed the water out. So
Yeah.
they this pattern is no longer really valid.
Right.
And the fishing gets a little tough. How would you recommend people fishing for these trout? Um, yeah,
I mean, other than like, it depends on what are you focusing on. Are you focusing on? I believe that the bigger trout, you might get lucky every now and then catch a big trout in the school of decent size or smaller trout. That doesn't happen often for me, but if I'm targeting big trout, it's totally different than just targeting trout in general. But if I'm targeting trout, there's still birds working out there for trout. So if you get lucky, you get to catch them out there in the south shoreline, working birds, sometimes up in the northern shorelines too, you get lucky. But targeting trout seems um, like like it was just eaters. I'm guessing from 19 to 20 inches or
mhm,
22 inches. I'm kind of focusing more on kind of a deeper shell, um, deeper reef, like maybe 3 to 4 feet. Some kind of structure sometimes also helps out. Some drop off cliffs, but some smaller ones. We're talking about where the deepest it gets is 7 feet, and you
yeah,
got like a little drop off to it, like that goes from 4 to 7, or some kind of transition on that edge. I like to really focus on that. It seems like I get more numbers that way. So those are the
yeah,
two main ones that I get numbers on,
yeah.
or
For
three.
me, it's I'm still fishing the same areas that I am during the fall because it has been fall for a little bit. Um, but I'm fishing really slow right now.
Mm,
It's even though there's bait everywhere. Traditionally during the fall, this is when whenever I started fishing really hard, this is where I gained all the confidence in fishing lures because you could throw anything, and I caught fish on it. This is when I started figuring out how the mirrodines, different soft plastics, the 52 MR mirror lures, top waters, the corky. This is whenever I was just throwing everything and anything, even poppers. I hardly ever throw poppers. I was throwing poppers and I was catching fish on it. But
nice.
now, whenever these transition periods where right now it's just super warm, the fish have no idea what's going on. And I would be in areas where the fish should be. There's bait there. I'm no longer, my go-to soft plastic. I'm just usually just burning it back and just kind
Right.
of twitching real fast. I'm now slowing it down. I'm almost fishing it as almost a winter pattern where I'm just slowly hopping it.
But
And
not quite a winter pattern, huh?
yeah, not quite.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I'm just slowly hopping it on the bottom, and I'm actually not even. Some of the times I'm not even feeling the bite. I'm just when I hop it, you just feel the weight. So
Mm,
whenever after the last hop, they just sucked it in and just sat there, didn't do
yeah.
anything. And you pick it back up, and there's a little bit of weight, and you just set the hook.
Right. Right.
Um,
And then
so
that's because Jonathan is using probably a rod and reel that he can feel the weight of the fish. Sometimes if you're using for trout fishing, if you're using like a medium heavy, you're less likely to feel it versus like an ultra light. Sometimes just feeling the weight, is important on these trout because not that sometimes people always think, and there's videos out there that trout eat bait all the same. And I've actually
no.
taken clients out where they ran up to the bait and they just grabbed the bait with the tip of their mouths.
Mhm.
And they're like, wow, I've never seen that. I was like, yeah, people always think that when trout hit it, it just swallows the bait and it's in their mouth.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. Sometimes these fish are a lot faster than we think,
Yeah.
especially a redfish. I remember burning a bait back real fast, and that was an eight gear ratio one, and I'm reeling it back, and that redfish still came back and smacked it. And I wasn't ready for it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, he damn near yanked the rod out of my hand. But yeah, seeing it, when you see these things, and then you're like, wow, it changes your perspective, and having a light rod to feel and know that okay, it's in his mouth. Let me just drop my right to put it better in his mouth, and then boom, set the hook. versus just, oh, he's on, and then lean back on it and rip the bait out of his mouth.
Yeah. And
that
they
makes
even,
sense.
I would even venture to say that it doesn't have. I'll preface by saying this: I'm not that big of a believer in kind of the color concept. You know, I believe in finding. If you find a feeding fish, they'll eat whatever you throw in front of them. I do believe, however, certain that baits do matter. From compared to a straight tail to a paddle tail to you know, a smaller profile shad imitation to a shrimp imitation, etc. And in some of these situations that I've seen, sometimes the fish are incredibly picky.
Right.
So, for example, you know, I think there's one time we were fishing over at the pass, and we were waiting right next to a gut, and the only thing that would hit was mirrodines.
You love
And
this story, don't you,
yeah,
Jonathan?
yeah, because that's one of the few times I actually I outfished Merriel here. So
Yeah, he did. He did. He had a good day that day.
but in terms of soft plastics, um, we can also I would also say that even like the bites, they bite differently depending on the soft plastic. I was fishing with a buddy of mine. We're next to each other, and I was throwing a straight tail, and he's throwing a voodoo,
Right.
a shrimp imitation, and he was saying that they were smashing this voodoo. Like I could even see the thump on this line, and he set the hook and he was on. Whereas mine, I'll get a slight tap, and I would set the hook, and I would lose some of the fish because it looks like they're just biting the back end of the straight tail I was fishing.
Right.
So, I think during these transition periods, obviously the fish for me, they're not keying in on mullet right now, which is during the pure winter time. Is I think they're keying in a lot of the bigger mullet. Like right now, they're still keying on shrimp and small shad imitations. I'm still catching them on those. So, but change it up if it's a tough day, definitely change up what you have out there. Put on that voodoo, put on that DOA, put on the knock and tail lures, the soft plastics, or throw on a corky. This is still a good time to try new things and figure out what they want. What do you think about that?
I like that. I like that plan. That's a good plan. I've been in similar situations as well where the bait, it did matter. We went from it's crazy. We went from like a 4-inch profile to a 3-inch profile, and it changed everything. And it was like, oh, dude, for some reason they're hitting on a 3-inch profile, you know, and we just switching it to size sometimes mattered. Me and Nick were out there on Bolivar's side and switched to a smaller profile one day. It was around winter. It was around winter time too, and yeah, we did pretty good, man. And then it was like night and day. Where, you know, fishing with this big profile bait, and then went to a smaller one because we knew they were there. We were looking right at them move, and yeah, it worked. So I, you know, change it up, switch it up. You never know. It could be one fish might want our school of fish just might want a different size bait, or they're chasing some different baits.
Yep.
You won't really know till you try.
And I think whenever we started talking before the show started, you were talking about something about the trout, you know, the local trout or the trout migrating around. But before we do that, definitely want to give a shout out to everybody who's joined us. What's up, everybody? Glad you could join us. And again, for those of you who joined us a little bit late, if you comment, you are automatically entered to win a pack of Fat Boys and Corkies, some Devils as well as some soft plastics donated from the Knock and Tail Lures and Michael. How about y'all guys like and share this live stream and trying to get it out? Definitely want more people to learn about fishing, more people to get into it. The fall time, it's a great time to get into fishing. So if you do that, we'd greatly appreciate it. So whenever we're talking about these transition periods, before the show, you were talking about whether we're fishing for these local trout or migrating trout. Explain that.
Right. So me, like, I try to. So that was this. We had, I think, it was like 27-mile-an-hour wind, and there's this deep channel that these fish kind of like go up and down. And usually when it's big wind days, like I just take my clients there because if not necessarily. When the wind's coming big out of the north, I take my clients there and we catch trout there. And these fish kind of, they all look the same. They stick around this area and they got a different color to them versus the ones that I'm catching maybe on the West Bay side where we're fishing shallower waters, or like if I'm fishing deeper canals and channels. Some of these fish, they kind of stick around these areas. um, uh, some of you may already know causeway trout, right? Some of these trout, they stay there almost all year long until it gets really, really cold, and the cement starts getting cold around the structure, and it's just really, really cold. And sometimes they move a little bit deeper, since they start heading towards offits or all these other places that they start closing down. But that's just one of the things to look for. So I typically, during transition times, I try to focus on more of the local fish that kind of stick around those areas. That way it's more successful for me. Versus example for the flounder, right? Where everybody's fishing for the flounder run. I think Jonathan and me agree they haven't quite moved into the channel thick, but that's when the northern wind drops all the water out of the marshes and bays, and it pushes all these bait out and pushes all the flounder out to start coming and migrating out through the channel and out to the pass, north and south jetty and San Luis Pass area.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess since you brought it up, and we should definitely talk about it. So the flounder season was closed, unfortunately, from November until today.
Today.
Yeah, so today. So December 15th. So it has reopened. And of course,
go out there and get y'all's limits, guys.
Yeah,
stack up the freezers.
Yep, stock up right now.
Yeah.
And of course, if you haven't seen social media, there's like 50 cars waiting outside of SeaWolf Park waiting to get in this morning. We were people watching online as people wandered around on the cams, and we're shoulder to shoulder out there. But one of the benefits, I guess, of this unseasonably warm weather and the lack of cold fronts is that you agreed with me, Merriel, that the flounder really haven't. I think they're definitely thick within the channel. I don't think a lot of the fish have moved out away from these marsh areas, these upper parts of the bay. So I think that gives us more time as flounder fishermen to be able to harvest these fish. Obviously, that we want to take into consideration the reasons and that we don't want to decimate the population. But I think this is a lucky break for us and being able to fish for them longer, because it's a process. We're going to get a couple good cold fronts, and they're finally going to make their way into the Galveston Ship Channel, and then we'll have a couple more weeks, and they'll be kind of over. Usually by this point, I know at least the last 2 years on the top of my head, by now the flounder run is kind of slowly starting to wind down. But I think it's still going to start to pick up a little bit in the coming weeks. So
yeah. Shout out to Texas City Dyke Fishing Group. If you don't follow that group, follow that group. They posted a 8-pound flounder caught today.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
know if it was an 8-pound flounder. They brought it into Boyd's and took a picture with it, and that's a pretty big flounder.
Oh yeah. So
but that's also a good example of some of the flounder that stay there in the channel. You can catch them year round.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have ones that are kind of coming out and competing for that bait, it makes for a very intense competitive feeding pattern, which a lot of people take advantage of.
Yeah. But anyways, back to this episode isn't about flounder.
Oh, right. Sorry.
But we can definitely we'll talk about that maybe in a future episode. But back to the transition period with trout.
Right.
So I guess, I mean, without exactly explicitly saying that, where are you fishing, Merriel? Give us a pin drop. But what are we looking for right now for these fish? Because it's not
SeaWolf Park.
SeaWolf Park. You'll definitely get lucky. You can get lucky there and catch flounder. But for the trout, what are we looking for? Because the common theme for wintertime. Actually, let me start. The common theme for fall fishing, is, and what we've said in the past is it's the upper bay, because this is when the shrimp patch happens. All the
Right.
shrimp is flooding out of these marshes. That's when the birds start working, and these trout, reds, and flounder are starting to fatten up. It kind of happened,
Right.
and then it transitions. They fatten up, and it goes to the winter where they will go into these, like we mentioned before, these deep channels. They'll set out these drop offs, 10 foot, and then they'll kind of transition up and down these ledges, from feeding to just kind of hibernating and sitting around. Hibernating is not the right word, but they'll just chill, off these ledges and wait until it warms up, and then they'll go up and feed.
Right.
So since this is all kind of mumble jumbled, what are we looking for as a fisherman? What are we targeting? It's not these mud bottoms.
Quite yet. Yeah.
Yeah, is it you said is it
I'm,
reefs?
yeah, I'm saying the deeper ones, not the shallow ones. But so like the deeper, like 3 to 4 feet, maybe even more,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the tide and the wind blowing out of the north. Because sometimes what used to be 4 or 5 feet is now like 2 feet because of the northern wind blowing all of it out. Yeah, so those are the areas I'm really targeting, and then the smaller drop offs, like where there's not deep channels, like 7 to 5 feet channels with small drop offs on them. Those areas. I'm still looking for birds working. I'm still catching them under birds, so we still have birds working. So that's all. That's always a plus too for me. So those are the things that I look for.
Yeah.
I'm finding these reefs right next to like big channels, right? So most of the time there's big channels, water, big access next to it. That's when I'm focusing on the reefs. These smaller ledges, smaller channels. When I'm around smaller channels, I'm looking for the smaller drop offs. Sometimes it could be just like a foot difference,
Yeah.
but as long as there's a difference.
And that actually makes a big difference. A lot of people don't realize, but that foot difference can make the difference between a really good day fishing and a bad day fishing. Which is why, if you go back to our, I believe, 2 episodes ago, where we talked about some of the important equipment that you should have on your kayak, we go through kayak basics. A fish finder is definitely very important,
Right.
because whenever it's 6 foot and you're trying to find that foot ledge that goes from 6 to 7 foot, um, it's going to be very difficult unless you have some sort of, um, a fish finder to do something like that.
Right.
One of the questions we have in the chat right now from Austin, he's asking, are you finesse fishing or are you using a paddle tail to do it?
Right now we're using it's not quite a paddle tail and it's not quite a rat tail. It's the knocking tails, those tails. So it's kind of like a hybrid lure because it can work as a rat tail and it can also work as a paddle tail, but it's not quite a paddle tail and it's not quite a rat tail. So it's what do you call it? Jerk shad, like a jerk bait.
Yeah,
So it's kind of I don't know what to call those baits. Go ahead.
I still think it's a paddle tail, but I would say that for finesse fishing, um, I'm actually right now I'm using both. Uh, I still have my Bass Assassins that I'm using, uh, just because I don't know what the fish want. I
That's
mean,
like your go-to lure, like that. I'm gonna throw this.
yeah. So my go-to right is the knocking tail, but sometimes there are occasions where it's just the rattle is too much, and you need a little more subtler presentation. Um,
Right.
it's like I'm going to be the first to admit I don't know what they want right now. It's
Right.
I'm
Yeah, you're
towards
just out there throwing whatever, and hopefully they hit it right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the middle of December. I'm in shorts and t-shirt. I don't know what's going on either. Um, so if you say finesse fishing means I have the straight tail, so like a bass assassin. Um, but during these, if we're talking specifically about these conditions, um, where it's a weird time, I'm throwing everything. I've even so for me, I will say the last time I went out, I generally don't throw spoons unless it's the summertime.
Mm,
And I really like the weedless spoon during, whenever the grass starts dying off right before the fall time in West Bay,
right.
because the fish will be sitting underneath all that dying grass, and you can't get a top water through it. You can't get a soft plastic through it unless you rig a weedless. But a weedless spoon, just burning it through right underneath the grass, is money. at West Bay right before fall happens. But that's usually the only time I throw a spoon. And I'm freaking throwing a spoon now because I'm like, I don't know what they want, and I'm trying to get a reaction strike. So, um, yeah, that's how bad it is right
Man,
now.
I know guys. That's all they throw is spoons,
Oh
man.
yeah,
They don't throw anything else but a spoon. They got one rod and one reel, one lure, and then an extra spoon hanging off their hat just in case
yep.
they lose one.
My first experience with seeing somebody, I was a kid. We were at the beach, and the first time I ever saw anybody throw a lure, it was this old guy with one of those like full brimmed hats, um, and all he had was like these two or three like metal. I didn't know what they were, but they were metal lures and they were spoons attached to his hat. He had this like 7 foot rod with the round like Abu Garcia ambassador or something like that,
Right.
and he was in the surf and he was just flinging that spoon out there, just reeling it in, and it would just he didn't even set the hook. Like it was just like reeling it in. It would bow over, and you
They
just
just keep rolling.
and just keep reeling, and you pull in a trout. And I'm like, what? And I was like, oh, fishing is super easy. You know, that's all
Right.
you have to
Yes.
do. Just reel it in.
Yeah.
And I was out there using like, a probably like a 4 ounce weight on a like a little Zebco reel, and I just sling it out there. And I was like, I'm watching him with like dead shrimp, and I'm just reeling it in, and nothing was happening. And I
That
was
was it.
like, why isn't this working? You know?
And I seen different guys work these spoons different, man. I seen them where they pop it and jerk it, and it does like a flutter when it falls down. I seen them where they're just burning it, or they're just burning and popping, burning and popping. I seen them work spoon many different ways. Me, I'm not a spoon guy. Have I used them and caught fish? Yeah, I have, but I typically throw plastics and fat boys and top waters are kind of like my baits. I know somebody mentioned it's hard not to throw top water. I'm still catching fish on top waters.
Yeah.
I'm still catching them on tops. So
Yeah, the water temperatures are still around like
yeah.
the upper 60s, low 70s,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's abnormal.
I had
um,
I had a client. I was teaching him how to throw top waters, and when he threw it out there, he's like pulling his braid out, and then as he's pulling his braid out, I just saw fish eat the top water, and the lure was just sitting there. And he was on, and he didn't even get all the braid out. I was like, dude, just keep reeling. It's running at you. We got lucky that the fish ran right at him, but
yeah,
all the bait did was just fall in the water, the top water, and fish came up and ate it as he's pulling his braid, pulling the backlash out.
yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Another question that we have from Austin here is like, what size lures are you throwing? The dye dapper, which is the big giant paddle tail, or the the 3.5 inch saltwater assassin.
Both.
Both.
My answer is both. Yeah.
Both, yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't throw the dye dapper, but I throw a different lure. When I'm fishing deep waters, I'm fishing like a pretty like 5 to 6 inch bait. I'm throwing a big bait down there. Sometimes, and then sometimes I'm throwing like a smaller bait. If I can't get them to hit that, I'll switch to a smaller presentation and then see if there's a difference. If there's not a difference, then obviously, but most likely there is a difference. Sometimes they want the bigger bait, but I always start off big and then start going smaller. I know some people, they start off small and they go bigger, but I do it opposite. So the answer would be both. But if I'm fishing like shallow reef, I'm not throwing a 6-inch bait. I'm throwing probably more likely like a 3-inch, 3.5,
Okay,
4-inch
you
bait.
have to let me know, what is this 6-inch bait, because I'm always looking for these,
It's
especially for the winter. I'm always looking for these bigger ones.
So I found them. Actually, my buddy Nathan introduced me to one of them. I actually had a different bait that I use, but he uses man, I don't even know the name of it, but it has ribs around it, and what happens is when it goes into the water, it causes a vibration, like a big vibration as it comes up. So it's like ribbed all the way around the bait. Kayak lure, a Kayak lure.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah, the Kayak, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the ones. And then I've also used a big old storm shad too, like a big old storm shad like this big. I've caught them on that one too. I've caught a big trout on that one.
Yep.
But something that I have more success with the bigger, like the rib fit. For some reason, man, I think how we stumbled on the ribbed on the baits
Mm-hmm.
was me and Justin were out fishing one day, and he's like, "Man, I'm catching them a lot on this lure, but the lure was a hard plastic, but it was ribbed." And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Man, I wonder if it's the vibration that brings the bigger fish, to it." So I went and tied one on, and we threw it out there. We just started catching the bigger ones out of the small ones. Um, I don't know the reason for it, but that day it's kind of turned me on to like start using rib baits. What I mean by
Okay.
ribs is it's got ribs on like
The body.
different rings. Yeah, rings
Yeah.
on the body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So those Kitechs, they're really big within the bass fishing scene.
Mm.
And of course, whatever soft plastic you can get your hands on, there, there's no fish that looks like a soft plastic. It's whatever the fish can see that as. They think it's food and they'll eat it.
Mm.
And of course, most of these soft plastics are supposed to imitate like shrimp or bait fish or whatever. But a bass or a trout can't tell what it's a bass lure, quote unquote,
Yeah.
bass
Oh,
lure. But
I didn't know it was. I
yeah,
just know I he used it and it was successful.
yeah.
But like a shad, like the shad, the storm shad, or actually it's the tsunami shad, the big ones. Like
Mhm.
man, they get creative in the bass world. They got some bad baits that look really close to fish. But like fish, they don't get to touch it and feel it and like, oh wow, you see that?
Yeah,
That is not a real fish.
yeah.
They got hands. Only way they could test it out is with their mouths. That's
Yeah,
you know.
I think we were talking um, earlier with the bass fishermen about traveling around. Um, it's I think bass fishing is a little bit different from our saltwater ones because those fish are generally they're in a lake or a pond or a river. Um, they're those fish kind of just stay there,
Right,
and they have so much pressure that
right,
they can see all these different baits come across them, and I think they learn, and it makes it more difficult. And and some of these areas are you have like the lakes in California where you can be in a boat and you can see the bottom like 50 foot down.
oh
So
wow.
yeah, it's super clear lakes. um, so I mean, for us, we don't have that kind of water around here, so
No,
we
we
don't
don't.
have to worry about that. But I think that's a whole different ball game.
Right.
um, so yeah, the Jay in the comments section right here, Yozuri, their
That's yeah.
topwater. They have topwater plugs that have the ridges on them as well.
Yeah,
Um,
those are the ones we were using. Jay Lee was a Yozuri. The ones that dived about, maybe I want to say about a foot or so, not too deep in the water column. Uh, but yeah, those are the ones that were Yozuris. Yep.
so um, actually, we kind of skipped.
Story time.
We kind of skipped story time. I actually have a
Yeah,
good story I want to
yeah,
tell you.
yeah. Let's hear the story.
So the last time I went fishing was about 2 weeks ago. There was a redfish tournament. It was like a Toys for Tots charity tournament, uh, run by Christopher Burr over at the Adventure Outfitters.
Oh man.
Um, actually I don't remember if that's the name of the shop, and I'm sorry if that was if I butchered that. But he does it every year. It's a great tournament. The entry fee is small, and the other part of the entry fee is to bring a boy and girl toy. Um, and Because the water has been so warm, I've been basically I was pre-fishing in like a early fall, late summer pattern, and I have an
Mm.
idea of where the redfish are at that point.
Right.
So I was sitting there, and I've been kind of on the redfish. I had an idea what we were doing. I invited Anthony. He's a young fisherman. He's going through nursing school right now. Has never fished a tournament, and he kind of wanted experience. I was like, okay, let's do this. Um, I have an idea. Let's see how it goes and go from there. We went out, and the early we had an outgoing tide the whole day. The good thing is that where we were, like a lot of places that I was scouting out, by the time you got there in early in the morning, the tide was already like 3 4 hours out, so the water level was super low. But where we were further up in the bay. and the water was not out yet. So we started with the high tide. It dropped throughout the day. And we were sitting at a drain, and we caught nothing. Like, I think we caught a
Wow.
bass. We caught a bass.
Oh man, you're way up north.
Yeah, we
Like
were
way
way up
back
north.
there.
Yeah, I actually got it was like a 3 pound, 2.5, 3 pound bass. It was like a nice bass for that
Oh wow.
area. Anthony, he got a he hooked onto, I think, a good red, and it popped off, like it cut
Oh,
the line up against some of the rock structure that was around, and that was it. It was
I know
dead.
exactly where you were at.
Yeah. And then we went further out towards the bay, and we fished along some bulkheads, some flats. It all actually looked really good. There's bait everywhere. The tide was moving. Just couldn't find anything. Actually, not even trout. Like, I was expecting we'd catch some trout out there too, but we didn't catch anything.
Did y'all make it
And
to the weigh-in?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So we went back to the drain and we started fishing along the way back. We got there's some trees, some submerged trees that were being exposed because of the dropping tide.
Right.
And I was literally pitching, like bass pitching, up
Mm-hmm.
against underneath these roots of these trees, and I started getting these bites, and it turns out to be really, really good redfish. Not really
Oh
good.
wow.
They was like 24, 25 inch redfish. So
Well,
at
when
this
you're
point,
having a rough day, those are
oh
the
yeah,
ones that
yeah, those are the ones, and I was ecstatic because, like, I got one. I was like, okay, we got one. And, a couple, we went probably another 50 yards down, got another one. We have two now. Added the three fish limit for the bring into the weigh-in. I didn't even care if we placed. I just wanted to bring fish into the weigh-in,
Right.
And we continued. We finished that section. We went back and we started again. I got my third one.
Nice.
Got my third one, and I'm like, hallelujah, we did it. Got our limit. We're gonna go to the weigh-in. Probably won't win because I know we're going against these redfish guys who know what they're doing. There's probably going to be like a 25 fish, 25 pound 3 fish limit.
Right.
So I knew that we were nowhere near that. I'm stringing the fish, and I got it into its mouth, and one of the fish in the water decided to pull the other way, and it just slipped out of my hand. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so I now have 3 redfish in the water, swimming away with my stringer. So we corralled the redfish, the stringer, after a couple attempts. Like, I was holding it, and I could feel like, okay, there's at least one still on there.
Right.
Pull it up. There's only
No.
one redfish left on it.
Oh, man.
So
Man, you weren't the only one that had a bad day. So just to
yeah,
let you know.
and I was so devastated. And it was funny too because, like, in the back of my head, I'm trying to be positive. I was like, things happen during tournament day. I'm gonna let's just go back through this stretch and maybe we'll catch some more.
Right.
It started raining. I got cold because I didn't bring any rain gear with me. I wouldn't think it was gonna rain. I didn't pack it. Or actually, I usually have it in my kayak, but I took it out for some reason, so I didn't have it with me. I got cold. It was raining. I was wet, and I know I'm sounding like complaining, but I'm just trying to express to you how the frustration that I had right here.
Oh man, nah, it was there was a lot of people that had bad days that day during that tournament. We had so the issue we had was that one of my buddies the hub on his trailer. So I already told him I can't make the weigh-in. We got family pictures. I think I posted a picture of my kids with it, but we had we had family pictures that day. So I was like, I can't make the weigh-in, but we can fish this morning. And same situation. Just we caught the fish. So we caught the fish. I had 227s, and the third one I caught was like a 25. But we didn't need the 25 because he had a bigger one on his stringer. So I was like, all right, man, you're gonna take him in? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna take him in. Well, his trailer, one of his hubs on his trailer, it messed up or something, and the lady didn't let him leave his trailer there to take the fish to the weigh-in.
Oh.
So he had to go take his figure out a situation. I don't know how he figured it out and how he did it, but but we started off I think we started off with lower slots, and then we just upgraded through the day, and then we caught some good ones, and we couldn't make it to the weigh-in, and we were pretty far away from the weigh-in. So
Yeah.
And then I heard another story of my buddy Pete and Grouch. They had some ones that were right under 28. They had a whole stringer full of some that were right under 28, and that was our original plan to go fish that area. But they actually got into some good schools over there, and they when they were getting out, I think the stringer popped on them, and he lost all those fish, dude. I was like, oh man. I was like, it must have been a bad day for a lot of people, man.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's just some of the stories that happened during that one tournament,
Yeah.
But shout out to Nick, man. Nick and Mike, they came out on top. They had 25, 26 pounds. I don't think we were nowhere close to that.
Yeah.
But we were under those guys. But man, shout out to those guys for winning that tournament.
Yeah.
Nick's a good friend of mine, and we fish together a lot too.
Yeah,
So.
and just as a kind of set the stage for redfish, whenever we have the slot of 20, 28 inches, a good tournament sized redfish is 8 pounds.
Right.
That's going to help you win all day long. And of course, anything bigger than that is going to be a slob. But if you brought in, if your weight is 25, 26 pounds, that means you got some really good redfish for that weigh-in.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely congratulations to them. And of course, this tournament wasn't about just it's not about a tournament. It's more about providing the toys for tots for the kids and all that.
Right.
So
right. I didn't even finish the story. So I ended up taking the toys to the little expo that they had. So he had some toys, boy and girl toys, and then I went and got some boy and girl toys. So since we didn't get to make it to the tournament, we were able to get the kids some toys at the expo. And if you guys want to donate, hit up Christopher Burr or Chuck Way on donating some toys to those guys. Y'all do great things for the kids out there every year. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
keep doing what you're doing.
I still have yet to drop off my toys. I will be doing that whenever I finally make my way back to Galveston. But I had them, so I guess we kind of got a little bit sidetracked here. But it's always a good time to talk about fishing and all that. And for those of you listening, again, thanks for joining us to the One Last Cast podcast. If you want to join us live, you can always see us at facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. And that's where we do a lot of our live shows as well as our giveaways. Actually, for those of you listening live, you will be, if you comment, you'll be entered to win a prize pack full of Corkies. I have a couple of the Fat Boys as well as the Devils, and a couple of the knock and tail lures from Michael, and some jig heads as well. That way that you can get on these big winter trout whenever the time comes. Actually, Aaron has a question that I wanted to address before we keep going. During this time, bigger bait, bigger fish during the cold temps. What are your thoughts? Yes.
His answer is yes. Man, I hate how do you say this without being a jerk about it? I'll kind of catch them year round, buddy. But certain times of the year you can definitely catch them fatter than most, right? Like when they're starting to bulk, or before they eat a lot, or before they spawn out, stuff like that. You definitely can catch them a little thicker, a little bit bigger. But me and a group of us, we kind of focus on big trout year round now. That's the only thing that gets us going pretty much when we get a chance to. I'm actually got a trip booked with Chad Peterick in February. See if I can learn some stuff from that guy. I'm pretty sure I will.
Nice.
And then Peter Deeks is my next guy I want to book, because that guy's a big trout guy too out there in Florida. So I want to definitely book a trip with that guy and see if I can learn some stuff from him.
Awesome.
And I'll share it with you guys.
Yeah. For me, it's yes and no. It's bigger bait can catch bigger fish. I think during the winter, I generally do. The profile does size up to like the 4.5, 5 inch, more towards a 5 inch actually. And that's why I was asking you about those 6 inch, because I'm still looking for a good larger size bait than what I can generally get at like Academy or Dick's Sporting Goods or wherever.
Bass Pro. No, Cabela's is where we bought that. The one I was telling you about.
Okay.
That was 6 inches.
Yeah. And of course, like obviously these fat boys, they have these really nice profiles, big giant profiles, the big painted eyes on there to imitate these mullet. I find that the issue is that I'm fishing a lot of, and during, especially whenever it's cold winter, I'm fishing in, like you said, 10 foot plus water. It's almost impossible to fish with a corky in that kind of water unless you're stationary, which in a kayak is very difficult to be stationary. So I'm looking for these bigger soft plastics to kind of have a present that show that bigger bait. That way that those bigger fish have an opportunity to see that and slurp that up. So yeah, so I think during the winter, bigger bait, that's the route I would go. But still, you can't discount some of the smaller profiles. Some of the smaller size baits, I think they move more naturally in the water, especially when you have current. So, go with the flow, go with your gut.
Yeah. If I'm targeting big trout, I'm throwing big baits. That's just what I do. I'm pretty sure there's some people that are successful. I've heard of people catching big trout on flies. So, yeah. But for me, I throw a fat boy. If I'm fishing deep, I'm throwing a big bait with a heavy jig head. Yeah. Deep waters.
Well, actually, that's actually a good comment right there. If you have the bigger bait, and actually, Alison just asked it, what jig head to use with a 6-inch bait. And I know you're fishing deeper water, but is there ever a time, obviously if you wanted to get down quick, you fish in 10, 15 foot of water and you have like a 6-inch bait, and you said you use a 3/8 ounce, because I'm
to a half in. Sometimes I use half.
Yeah, half to so that it can sink to the bottom. Is there any point you would go up in terms of the lightness of the jig head, a 1/4 ounce, an eighth? Because obviously when it sinks too fast, I know you're trying to get it to the bottom, and it's the same thing with the corky. It's not going to get to the bottom, but they like it because it has a very natural presentation to it. Right. So at what point would you size up on the soft plastic jig head?
If I'm not getting any bites, that's the only time. If I'm not getting any bites, I guess I'd go lighter. But typically, man, I got these routines. I stick to them. If I, I mean, I've gone to 1/4 ounce weight, a 1/4 ounce before. I've been more successful with the fish in the deeper waters. I guess if there's big current, you definitely want to go deeper. Heavier. But if there's less of a current, I guess you could do more of that natural presentation with the lighter jig heads. That would probably work.
Yeah. On the contrary to you, I start with a 1/4. I'm 90% of my jig heads are 1/4 ounce, and that's basically all I use. The only time I size up is whenever I'm heavy current situations, right. And I need it to go down to the bottom quicker because if I cast in front of me and it's super heavy current, it's going to be a mile to my left by the time it hits the bottom.
Yeah, didn't we meet up one time at a deep pocket, kind of in the back area? I think I saw you and your dad out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met you in one of those deep pockets. Was that a 1/4 ounce you were throwing?
Yeah, that was a 1/4 ounce, and I was. Right. But my dad was throwing a 1/4 ounce too, and he was slaying the fish.
Yeah,
I was getting frustrated because I was the one who showed him, like, they're over here. I know they're here, right. And he was just like, okay, first cast, pull up a trout. Okay, see, they're here. Second cast, pull up a trout. Third cast, pull up a trout, and I'm like, why am I not getting bit? And then y'all guys pull around and y'all start fishing it, and Justin started catching him. I'm like, what the heck, man?
No, that was me. I was slaying them, and your dad's like, what the hell are you throwing? Your dad looked at me and was like, man, because I just pulled up, and then I just started like started nailing them, and your dad's like who the hell is this guy? Or like, and then he's like, what the heck are you throwing, man? I was like, man, I don't know, I'm just throwing right here. And then yeah, that was me.
Yeah. Actually, we have a comment from YouTube. Hi, Lenny from YouTube.
Oh, cool.
So he's new into kayak, and do you need a fish finder for shallow water marshes? You don't need. Yes, because of the GPS. That's really all you. Because you're really not going to go back into a marsh, and you're not looking for those deep pockets or anything like that. Even though they're back there, if you're targeting redfish and all that, if you're going deep in the marsh looking for redfish, I think all you really need is that GPS, because you need to be able to figure out how to get back out.
And Lenny, this is for those real marshes. I'm not talking about where there's like 2 patches, but yeah, but when you get into those deep marshes, I mean, you don't know where you're turning, and you're going down these canals and you're exploring, and you're trying to hit those redfish all the way in the back, seeing where it ends. Yeah, definitely. Jonathan's right. The GPS will help you make that route a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I generally also don't. I use my phone to help me, but also I don't depend on my phone, just because if something happens to that, it's nice to have that GPS as a backup, or as a primary, and then use your phone as a backup. So it kind of gives a little redundancy in that situation. So if you're going to go back there, definitely I would recommend getting a fish finder just for the GPS. But it's also useful for whenever we're fishing for trout out in the open waters or deeper waters. You can find, like we were mentioning earlier in the podcast, in the show, even finding that 1 foot change in the depth. That makes a big difference, finding that ledge. Actually, I will give a story, an experience I had with that. Over in San Luis Pass, there's a couple areas where I will kayak out to and wade. And when I go out there, I specifically look for this single foot change. There's actually an area, is a sandbar that comes up, and I'm looking for that foot change where it kind of drops. It's not a lot, but you can feel it whenever you're stepping there and you step off, and it's probably not even a foot. It's probably like 8 inches. But for some reason, that drop right there and the way that the water flows, the fish love it there. And basically, I'll find it and I'll set that drop between my legs, and I'll cast down that drop. And that's how I'll catch fish. So these small drops, they make a big difference, especially in these high current areas. So definitely invest in a good fish finder. A good one that Lenny's asking which one that you recommend. Really, I personally, because I have a Hobie and they have that transducer plate with Lowrance, that's what I use. I've had no issues with them, but they're all pretty good. I mean, they do their job. Merriel, do you have any recommendations?
I don't use fish finders. I want to get one, so when I do get one, I'll explore around. I've used Lowrance before, but I never really got to truly use it. I bought the 3D structure scan one, and I set up a crate and did this whole mechanism.
Yeah, you're talking
where
about
like
that.
where the arm folds out onto the water. I ended up selling it just because I didn't really use it. I kind of had these areas that I fished and, had my ways of looking for them, reading the water. But I don't know, man. I don't know a good one out there yet. I definitely I like the newer technology though. The ones, was it Ray Marine or?
Yeah, Ray Marine.
German?
Yeah, Ray Marine. They have the Dragonfly, I believe.
Yeah, and then they got the live scope one now, where you actually looking at the fish and moving around in the water.
Live scope is Garmin. So.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So I think that's really cool, man. These fish are going to be easier and easier to find the more technology we dig into it.
I'm interested to see if anybody has put a live scope onto their kayak, because that whole system setup is actually probably worth more than the kayak itself. So,
is it really? How much do those run? I don't even know.
They're thousands of dollars. That's not even including the battery and all that. At least that's my impression that I've gotten. But Yeah, something simple. Humminbird has some good units. Garmin has some great units. Some of the entry with the Striker models that are great for kayaks. The Striker 4 and 5. You don't really need, like I have a 5-inch 300 Lowrance 5, the Elite 5, and that works really well. I'm sorry, the Hook 5. And but all yeah, the Lowrance Hook series, the 4 and the 5 is perfect. If you want to spend a little more coin, they goes up to 7, even 9-inch models. The 7 to 9s, they work fine. But just understand that also with the bigger unit, you have to have more battery associated with it. So just take that into consideration.
We got a good question from Derek.
Yeah. Any tips for fishing without a fish finder? That's a good one.
Derek, I preach this and teach this a lot, is reading the water, looking for bait blowing up, looking for birds working, looking for points, looking for currents, looking for eddies, looking for differences in the water, looking for wakes up against the grass lines, looking for blowups against the grass lines, hearing blowups deep in the grass line when the tide's really, really high and you're pitching in the grass. So these are techniques and strategies that I use without a fish finder.
Yep. I definitely agree with all that. And I would add to that, learn how to read the water from Google Maps. Because if you look at Google Maps and you see that you can distinguish this is grass, this is shell, there should be a drop off here. So that, and kind of create a mental image or print it out. Yeah, you can do that too. Have an understanding of where you're at. And whenever you explore, try to, I'm fishing this area because it looks like there's grass right here. That's when you can do a couple things. You could go out to the area, and of course, if you can see it, that's great. If you can't see it, either if you can weigh the area, that way your boots are on the ground and you can feel what that structure is underneath. There should be grass here. Okay, I'm feeling it on the bottom. There's grass here. Or there should be a reef here. I'm feeling that with my boot. I can feel that there's a reef here. And then you can kind of map it out mentally in your head, walk around it. Or if you want to stay in your kayak, get like your stakeout stick, stakeout pole, anchor. I don't recommend your rod because you can definitely break a rod doing that. I've done that before. But just if you ever see me out in the water, sometimes even with a fish finder, what I'm doing is I'm poking around on the bottom. I'm trying to understand, why are the fish here, and I'm poking. And okay, there's a reef here. I'm going to go down a little bit. Okay, the reef still goes over here. Go down a little more. Okay, the reef looks like it's running this way. Let's see how far it can go. And I'm fishing. Okay, this is the reef, and this is actually sand and mud right here. So this is the edge.
Right.
This is the edge of the reef. And it's especially really nice if you can't see the bottom, just poking around and feeling and understanding what the bottom is, so that you can understand why the fish are there. So that would be my tip fishing without a fish finder. Is just, if you can get in the water or you can poke around, do that, because that helps a lot. So, all right.
Appreciate it, Juan. And I don't know, Melissa's on here. You need to come pick up your rod, or I'm going to fish with it.
So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I know we kind of got off topic a little bit, but we're talking fishing. Fishing's fun.
Yeah.
And of course, good luck to everybody who is fishing the Founder Run. It is on. Go out there right now and see if you can get your limit. And hopefully you can, if you catch a big one, send us a message and we'll maybe post it. Definitely want to see some of those big girls that are out there. So I guess before we sign off, Merriel, is there any last bit of wisdom that you want to give to everybody?
Yes, wear your PFDs, guys. A guy was actually saved down south. He didn't have his PFD on, but he almost hypothermia, but he got rescued by Texas Park and Wildlife, but he didn't have his PFD on, and when he came back and told the story, he wished he had one on. Sometimes he also had a good point, sticking his feet into the water, because even though the cold wind was just blowing in, the water was warmer, and that helped him from reaching temperatures where he got in real trouble and passed out and from hypothermia and could have died. So make sure you wear your PFDs, guys.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this episode of One Last Cast podcast. Again, if you want to join us live, you can join us at facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. There we have all these contests, and you can join us live and talk to us, ask questions. Or if you don't want to ask a question live, send us a message. We just ended a couple of our contests, and we'll be doing more in the coming months. Be on the lookout for that. And of course, if you want to listen to any of our podcasts, download it wherever you want to download it. There's Facebook Podcast now, which is new. Facebook has podcasts now. That's kind of cool. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And of course, if you want to send us a message, we love to hear from you. Topics or comments, concerns, whatever. Definitely want to hear from you. And again, before I sign off, share this video, share this podcast with people, and if you share this video and have them comment, they'll be entered to win these awesome. I'm giving out a quirky prize pack with 2 fat boys, some quirky devils, and some knock and tail lures, and some jig heads, some cool stuff. Who doesn't love free stuff? So
Right. We got some cool stuff coming next year. We're gonna have more rods, more reels, and gear and all kinds of stuff. So y'all stay tuned and keep share us, man. The more the merrier. We appreciate it.
All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and y'all guys have a good one.